When Alexandros wanted to relieve him of his command so that he could rest and recuperate, Nearchus begged to be allowed to take his fleet on to the Tigris, and the king granted his wish, and he gave his first admiral a chaplet of gold to wear in token of his victory over the sea. This reported glimpse of the Arabian mainland fitted into the mental picture of the world shape which Alexandros and the geographers were piecing together for the first and only time since crossing to Troy. Ilium, what's the Greek name for Troy? His surveyors had failed to keep up their daily check of distances and direction during the terrible crossing of the Mecron, but the columns had managed to keep itself fairly well oriented. He determined immediately, now that Nearchus had proved that a fleet could survive along these shores, to explore the perimeter of Arabia, to find a route by sea onto the coast of Ethiopia, whence he might reach the Nile or its headwaters. Beyond Ethiopia lay Libya, Africa, which had never, to his knowledge, been circumnavigated. If his ships could penetrate thither, they would link up the far west to the east as far as the Indus mouth, and the shape of the southern oikumena would be established. Except for Nearchus's single encounter with sea monsters, there seemed to be no supernatural powers guarding this frontier of outer ocean. What were his plans? Arrian relates here. I can only conjecture, but I can say with confidence that he planned nothing small or mean, for he would have gone on seeking for some unknown land beyond those that he had mastered. His scheme of exploration had to be put aside. He had been away for too long from the heart of his Eurasia. Twice, in the last 4 years, the report of his death had been carried west along the post and caravan routes. His reappearance in the hills near Persepolis with an army of many nations had been a surprise to most of the governors he had left behind him. Chapter 20. Corrosion of wealth. Under the circumstances, what happened should have been no surprise to Alexandros. Since leaving Ecbatana 4 years before, he had been out of personal touch with his government, which in any case he had thrown together most hurriedly. Evidently, much had gone wrong. Macedonians left in power had tried to increase that power, and naturally exact information as to the extent of the damage was slow in reaching the monarch's headquarters. Perhaps at first he tried to deceive himself as to the magnitude of the task of organization that faced him at Persepolis. Only the evidence of ancient Persians made it clear to him. European military governors had failed to cooperate with Asiatic viceroys in many cases, and had started to amass their own treasury funds, something Alexandros had tried to prevent. In Persia itself, temples had been pillaged and native chieftains executed. Alexandros appointed Pukestas, who had held a shield over him when he was cut down in Asia, satrap of Persia. Elsewhere, he pushed savagely, hanging officers at officials when guilty. He was astonished at the multitude that came to besiege the royal stairway at Persepolis, where the columns of the royal stairway of the ruined hall of Xerxes. I know people say Xerxes, but I don't know the Greek. I'm trying to make Greek pronunciations of these place and people names. Towered like obelisks. This multitude pressed in from far places, bringing news, petitions, charges, and appeals from judgment. They brought from Ararat and Ilium and Babylon the unfinished business of 4 years for him to attend to, for Alexandros was the one supreme administrator and judge who could overthrow other decisions, and the rigid purge of his European officers had given the Asiatics courage to appeal to this great king. They gave him a startling conception of the changes wrought in those 4 sweeping years. Scholars had graduated from the new academy in Alexander in Egypt, merchants in Alexandria in Laodicea complained that the Egyptian shipmasters banded together to prevent grain ships of the Euxine from landing there, as the king had to think back to recall that this particular Alexandria had been built within a march of the battlefield of Issus.